Hi, my name is Keith Lucombe, and I'm sitting here in sunny Florida with my wife Shakina Lucombe. Hello. And we're here today to just answer a few questions that some of you YouTubers have written in about homeschooling. And we've been homeschooling for approximately about 16 years, honey. Yeah, so I think we're in a position to be able to answer a few questions, and we have four kids right now. We homeschool three of them, and we have a 16-year-old and 14-year-old, as well as a 10-year-old, and a new addition to our family. She's 11 months, going to be a year pretty soon, and we have homeschooled the first three, and we're planning to homeschool at a new edition. And I'm going to let my wife basically start with answering some of the questions you guys wrote in about. Who and what inspired you to homeschool?
Well, back in 1995, I was watching a program, and there was a young lady out of Queens, New York, that had three sons, and they were all physicians. And she was being interviewed, and she was talking about their upbringing and the fact that she homeschooled them. And so that sparked a particular interest for me. I asked my husband about it, if he was familiar with it, and he was. And we talked about it, and we decided that when we did have children, we would definitely homeschool them.
Do you have any homeschoolers in your family?
I do actually. I have a cousin that homeschools. She's been homeschooling for a while now. I have my brother and his wife also homeschool.
How long have you homeschooled?
Oh wow, we started with our oldest, who's 16. She'll be 17 in July. She attends University of South Florida. We've homeschooled her the majority of her life. So yeah, quite some time. Well, I just wanted to add, for those parents that may you feel like homeschooling is a big commitment, and it's when once you start, you can't go back. We have started and stopped, along the way, and adjust our depending on what's going on in our lives, we have adjusted it towards the homeschooling. So don't think because you decided to start homeschooling and maybe like your life takes a different turn, you may have to, sometimes put them back in school, take a year off, and then come back to it. So, once you commit to it, don't feel like it has to, be a consistent thing. But the key is to have the heart to do it. And once you do, you will find a way because there is different, aspects to homeschooling, not just the time, but also finances. And we know in this time and age, most families need two incomes to be able to survive. And that's one of the major issues or questions we have we get about homeschooling. How do you do it on one budget? It's a lot of sacrificing, for sure. I mean, we've done it on one budget, one income. One income. It's a lot of sacrificing. I also encourage parents to start out on Saturdays, like Saturday school, where you take 4 hours on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, sit down with your children, help to get them to where they need to be, and even to advance. If you want them to advance, work with them, spend a few hours. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, like my husband said. Start on the weekend, in the evening, spend an extra hour, teaching and introducing new material. So that's the beauty of homeschooling. You decide what hours you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and what you plan on teaching. It's up to you. So it's flexible.
How many children do you homeschool?
Right now we homeschool three. Like I said, with my daughter, she's at the University of South Tampa, so we're done with her. She's actually a junior. She'll be graduating next year with a degree in cellular and molecular biology, and then from there she'll be entering med school. So we're super excited about that. We have my 14-year-old. He's at Polk State. So we're doing what you call a dual program with him, where he's actually a 10th grader, but he's actually pursuing his associates at this time at Polk State. So, and then we have the 10-year-old that we have quite a few years left, and then the new addition. So yeah, 16, 17 more years to go.
How do you stay motivated?
When I see what happens when you put your time and your effort in, when I see my daughter, how she excel with the homeschooling, when I see other homeschooling families, um, children that may have had a problem, and it seems like maybe in the school system they were kind of written off, and you just see the transformations. It's motivating for me. What do you think?
I think my motivation definitely comes from my personal experience with the school system, and I think from that experience as well as understanding the dynamics of African Americans in a school system that might be majority geared towards um, Anglo-Saxon white Americans, and knowing that when they're in there, they may not be getting the best education geared towards them and their self-esteem. So one of the biggest things for us in homeschooling that motivates me is knowing that by homeschooling, I get to teach them a lot of, I guess, things that they wouldn't have gotten in the public schools, which is the history and knowledge of themselves and basically things that would basically boost their self-esteem. And once a child's self-esteem is high, they have the capability of learning anything you teach them. But when it's the other way around and their self-esteem is low, it blocks them, their mental capacity to be able to absorb information. So that self-esteem piece in itself helps knowing that we have the capability to be able to do that for them is a big motivator, and to keep them in that environment and keep them able to learn and absorb as much information as they can.
And that kind of reminds me, when you said that, an incident that happened to me in fourth grade at Central Elementary. I had a teacher. Actually, her name was Mrs. Stevens. If you're watching, and we were studying. we were studying history, and we were doing a timeline, and so on the timeline, it had it was dealing with slavery, and so I raised my hand and I said, "Well, Mrs. Stevens, where were the black people before slavery?" And she said, "We didn't exist before slavery. That our history actually started, during slavery." And so I had been talking to my father at home, so I knew that wasn't accurate. I knew we came from Africa, and I knew about the different empires. And so I raised my hand again and I said, "Well, Miss Stevens," I said, "that's not true. We had to be somewhere doing something before we were captured, and captured." And she said, "Your history started in slavery. You're disrupting the class. If you say another word, you're going to the office." Well, she took me to the office, and I never ever forgot that incident. So that to this day, and I'm well in I'm in my 40s, and I still remember that. And like I said, that was fourth grade. So when you said that about the self esteem, I remember my self esteem at that time. I remember another incident in high school. Of course, we lived in a predominantly white area, predominantly white school, and they decided to do an assignment, and we had to vote for slavery. And they would give you a card saying yes or no, and with that card, you had to argue why or why not. And my card was yes. I was the only black student in that class, and I had to stand up in front of the class and say why I think slavery is good for this country. And I thought that was so insensitive. And I marched right to the office, after the class. And, we called my mom. My mom came to the school. But just incidents like that, I thought I'd never want my children to have to experience that.
And that's good that you were able to share this incidents, but thousands of kids, there's things like that and even worse happen to them in schools, public schools often, and they never come home and basically able to express it to their family, but they keep it within, they keep it inside, and they take it as internalize it, and when you see your kid grades dropping, believe me, it probably has very little to do with their capability to learn, and it's more have to do, I believe, with how they feel about themselves from the repercussions of the teachings in
Stigmatized
the
and
schools. Yes.
criminalized. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
well, that's one of my big motivations for homeschooling. Any other questions?
Any closing remarks?
Again, I would encourage all parents get involved in your children's education, even if you don't homeschool full time. Work with them. Go to the library, get library cards. Make sure. I think all children should have library cards. Make sure they're reading. Watching films, documentary, learning about history and knowledge of self. This day and age is very important. And you don't want your children walking around not having knowledge of self, not understanding how the world works, not understanding how this country works, in order to survive. So
Yep.
each one teach one.
And I definitely agree that the reading piece, and you don't have to homeschool to take your kids to the libraries or even a fun place, maybe Barnes and Nobles, and have them sit there and just read with them for an hour. Because reading is, they say reading is fundamental, but it is the core of everything we do. And most successful people, they'll tell you they read 2 or 3 books a day, and I'll admit I'm not an average reader, but I'll tell
You
you,
do read.
I read, and I don't read nonfiction. I mean, read nonfiction, not fiction. I will not sit around and read a lot of fiction. So I spend even though I don't read as much, I will only read core material. That's that that's
Adds to you.
that adds to me, and basically uplifts myself, my family, and my community. And thank you guys very much for listening. And if you have any other questions, please, you see the like button down there. Please like or subscribe. Appreciate it. And have a good day.